to the Jurassic Park 3 Minutes, where we'll be discussing the second Jurassic Park sequel 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
Okay.
And on this episode we'll be discussing minute 12 of Jurassic Park 3, but before we get to that, a little bit of news to catch up on this week. There's been a couple of announcements. Jurassic World Evolution, the game, is getting an expansion, including some missions with Dr. Wu. David, do you know much more about that? We weren't going to dive deep into the news itself until we got some more news on it, but there's just been a couple of announcements.
I don't really play Evolution all that much, so I really don't know that much about it, unfortunately.
That was going to be the other question, if you had Evolution yet or not, and we're playing it.
I haven't played it a ton yet, so...
Yeah.
I've never played Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, so I'm not familiar with how this works, you know.
I've got Genesis sitting here beside my laptop. I've had sitting there for about 2 weeks. I've been meaning to load up, and it's just I don't really have time to play it. One, and two, it's sort of it's fun, but it's not really. It's an attempt at Jurassic Park. You can try and build your own map all you want, but it's never going to be the same. Where at least now with Evolution, they've actually got the islands looking a bit better and the details there. But saying like I wouldn't have time, and like the last big game I purchased was the Lego Jurassic World one, just because it covered all the films. And one little thing I didn't realise, I was looking at some photos last night. There's actually a segment in the Lost World portion where the Venture crashes into the dock, and Ludlow arrives via that corporate helicopter and lands on the dock in front of where the boat crashes. So it's an interesting little thing there I discovered. What they do in the Lego game that isn't really done in the film. We always wondered if that was Ludlow in that helicopter and if he did land near that waterfront somewhere. But
well, speaking of Ludlow and the Lego games, we are actually getting our very first prequel to Jurassic World through the Lego games. I think there's going to be like a Lego game, kind of like mini movie sort of thing.
Yeah, much the same as the Indominus Escape was.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be about 44 minutes. I don't know a price on it yet, but I know it's up on Amazon.
And probably the biggest thing where me and you are concerned, and where we're hoping here, is it's rumoured to be taking the animals off sauna, and we're back on sauna, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely where my excitement for the game's going to be coming from anyway. I suppose while we are on Lego too, Lego and Mattel have announced this past week that Lego's going to be making 3 more Lego sets for the Jurassic World line for 2019, and one of those is going to be an original Jurassic Park set. I'm assuming after the success of the Raptor Chase set that come out this year, so that's definitely exciting. I've got all the Lego sets and I can't wait for these new ones. What the Jurassic Park one's going to be, we don't know if they're going to try and mash up a couple of different scenes into one like they did with that Raptor Chase, or fingers crossed we get a set of gates and an Explorer.
I was hoping either Explorer / Gates, kind of like mixing those two up, or because they already have a lot of pieces for it, the T-Rex Escape combined with the Jeep Chase.
Yep, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, it would.
Probably start seeing what these are in February with Toy Fair, I'd imagine, so we can report more on what's coming out exactly there when we have more news on it.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Jurassic Minutes listeners. Brad here. Do you like the Jurassic franchise? Of course you do. You listen to this podcast and most likely the other Jurassic themed podcasts out there. If you're not, go and do it right now. But do you also like mysteries, and mysteries pertaining to the Jurassic franchise? Well, David and I have teamed up to produce a special Patreon-only show deep into some of those mysteries. What did kill the men on the parasailing boat in Jurassic Park 3? What is the real story behind the 5 deaths? And did a hurricane really hit Isla Nublar back in 1993 during the Jurassic Park incident? All these mysteries and more we tackle twice a month for your listening pleasure for as low as $1 over at our Patreon page, Jurassic Minutes. Head over, check out the podcasts, and let's go on the journey to solve some mysteries together. Dave, apart from that, anything we want to discuss before we get into minute 13? No, minute 12.
No, we're good.
Alright. As we entered minute 11 of Jurassic Park 3, Billy and Cheryl were getting close to each other and flirting over the raptor skeleton, but were broken up by Dr. Grant's return to the dig site. As we open on minute 12, Billy asks Grant how'd the trip go, and Grant replies, well, it's not too late to change your major. At the 10-second mark as they walk through camp, Billy replies, that bad, huh? Grant replies, worse, we're going to have to pack up in 4 weeks. Billy corrects him and says 3, and that he had to rent some equipment, and the two walk towards a tent at the far edge of the dig site. At the 22-second mark, we cut to a computer screen, and a velociraptor skull can be seen in what looks like an X-ray of the skull. Billy says, welcome to the future of paleontology. Billy shows Grant the rapid prototyper, and tells him about how he inputs the scan data from the skull into the computer, and it builds the resonating chamber one layer at a time. At the 37-second mark, the computer beeps, prototype complete, and Billy slowly opens the top of the machine to pull out the prototype. At the 49-second mark, he holds it up to Grant and says, I'll give you the resonating chamber of a velociraptor. And as the minute ends, Grant smiles as Billy brings it up to his mouth and starts to blow, a shrill cry emitting from the small object. As we open on minute 12, Alan stands in front of his truck there we've seen last minute and replies to Billy, Mr. Brennan, as Billy gets up to meet him. And we cut to Billy getting Alan's bag out of the back seat of the truck, and he asks Alan, how did it go? Rather frankly, Alan replies, well, it's not too late to change your major. Which we sort of discussed last week about him supposedly only being 25 and being here in charge of the dig site. And it seems like he's only out there to get a major in paleontology, so it might not even be his desired path.
Mm-hmm. You're pretty, I mean, at least in the United States, you're usually pretty locked into what you do for the rest of your life. I mean, a lot of people do, some people do change majors. I mean, notable example, James Cameron was a truck driver before he became a filmmaker. So there's hope for us yet. And he's like swimming in the money right now. I'm sure he's got like a literal Olympic-sized swimming pool full of cash after the Avatar movie.
Yep. The two start walking through the dig area, and Billy sort of replies, that good, huh? And Alan continues, worse. We're going to have to pack up in 4 weeks. Yeah, it's not a good sign.
No.
And we sort of discussed a couple of minutes ago where the students were talking to Grant in the lecture theatre and just wondering what the state of paleontology was in this Jurassic era, and we'll get to it in a couple of minutes' time, especially with the novelisation, but it's not a good sign here where they just can't get funding to dig up dinosaurs anymore. People want to see the real thing, and it just sort of goes to show exactly why Masrani was successful in the end in getting another park open.
I mean, frankly, we never, we gotta admit that Jurassic World, for what it was the first, and as far as we know, only dinosaur park in the world. So, I mean, I don't know anybody who probably wouldn't pay to see a living dinosaur. You know?
Well, you do get some, and Zia brings it up in Fallen Kingdom, just not having enough money to go to the island to visit. And there would be a lot of people like that, but then that's when you...
There's a lot of people out there whose kids never see Disney World or Disneyland just because the cost to go there. I mean, sure, it's the happiest place on earth, but that comes at a very steep price.
It's not on the last day when you're heading home bankrupt.
Yeah.
You pay, what's Hoskins Line, end up working in a place like this paying $7 for a soda.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sometimes 10.
Yeah, yeah. Yep. And that's Disneyland for America, but most countries have their major theme parks somewhere in the country, and even then just trying to get to it, whole accommodation, transport, fuel, and everything else.
And to see everything, you're there at least a week, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I'd imagine it'd probably be the same for Jurassic World. I mean, if you want to see everything, the aviary, the river cruise, the golf course, even if that's your thing, you're there at least probably 3 or 4 days, you know?
Yeah. Well, you'd think it'd have to be at least a 3-day package.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get to go on a golf course and see Golemon sit there eating the grass, then I'm going to learn how to play golf. So yeah, it makes you wonder what the state of paleontology is, and even as they're walking through, you can see a lot of film extras here, but a lot of them seem to be that college age, or sleeping in tents, or a lot of motorhomes in this area as well.
Mm-hmm.
But after Grant sort of says have to pack up in 4 weeks, Billy comes back quickly with free. He had to rent some equipment. Come on, I've got to show you something. And then we get that line, "You like computers, right?" Where it just we'll drop this little line in there just to bring back to the first movie where
he prefers the abacus.
Yeah, he prefers the abacus, Billy. Which sort of, yes, you had the line where he's putting his hand on the monitor when they're doing the sonar imaging for the Raptor in the first movie, and he says there that he doesn't like computers. But I think it's more just that he doesn't have regular access to them, where you'd think now, being 7 years later, 8 years later, he would have had to, at least data recording and all that sort of stuff would be all computer by now. By 2001, there wouldn't be a lot of notebooks in his camp, you'd imagine, but then we cut to a screenshot and we get Billy's voiceover saying, "Welcome to the future of paleontology." Clearly an Apple software, Apple computer running here. But Billy continues, "It's a rapid prototyper. I enter the scan data from the raptor skull. The computer breaks it down into thousands of slices, and this sculpts it one layer at a time."
So essentially it's a 3D printer.
Well, I've been doing a little bit of research today on it, and it's in the same family as a 3D printer, whereas a 3D printer has, like, the element, your plastic or whatever it is, to add and actually print layer upon layer of the item. A rapid prototype is more, it has a block of material, resin, and it carves what you want out of that, which is why when we get here in a minute, you'd never be able to blow through it. They can't do hollows or holes in the external surface of the item that you print, like sculpting. So it's sort of they sort of mix between a rapid prototyper and a 3D printer here, where he says it makes it line by line, but that's what a 3D printer does here, or section by section, scan by scan. But rapid prototyper is more of sculpting David out of a block of like a statue out of a block of marble. That's from what I've been able to read on Googling it anyway. But it's only a fairly new design. Sort of rapid prototyping, 3D printing sort of come in the late 80s, and it's interesting looking at some blogs and websites and that for companies now that do rapid printing and 3D printing. A lot of them cite Jurassic Park 3 as the first time they've seen it on screen and been fascinated by it up until now, where they're actually running their own business or 3D printing their own stuff. So, say what you want about the film itself, it did have a lasting impression on some people out there, technology-wise.
I guess you could say comparably to the first Jurassic Park. A lot of people who watched the first Jurassic Park watched it and said, "Wow, that VFX is incredible. I want to do that," you know?
It's the Unix system, I know this.
Well, I mean, I'm talking like the visual effects of the dinosaurs themselves, you know?
Well, even the animatronics and all that sort of stuff, there had been animatronics in film before, but I think Stan Winston that really stepped it up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as you're saying, like the VFX, all the special effects being the first of their kind, doing all the computer layers and that, making the technology to do it, and going from there. There's definitely a lot of people in the business now, or people that would have been working on Jurassic World that grew up on Jurassic Park, and now they're creating the dinosaurs in the computer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's exactly what happened. Julian Romero works for ILM and constructed scenes for, I think, Fallen Kingdom and Rogue One. He saw Jurassic Park as a kid, probably like many of us did, and he said, "I want to do that for a living." You know? I mean, a different part of it, but like, for example, when I was a kid, I saw Jurassic Park, and I said, "I want to dig up dinosaurs." Of course, that never happened, but it was a dream as a kid.
Yep, no, that's it for the longest time. Yep, want to be paleontologist, and you sort of look in and go, rightio, well, what's the local paleontologist scene like? Oh, okay, well, that's nowhere near me. That university is nowhere near me. It costs that much? Oh, okay. And all of a sudden the dream starts to die.
Well, for me, it was the math.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. That and biology was a bit challenging, but it's sort of interesting here too. The sort of having to buy this equipment has lost them a week's digging out of the 4. Being the rapid prototyper, probably being something new of the day, would have been expensive, but it just makes you wonder how much their costs are per week to be at the dig site.
Mm-hmm.
So we sort of know from back in Jurassic Park, even though it's 8 years later, Hammond was giving him $80,000 a year, and then that wasn't even fully funding the dig. That was just what he was currently giving them as one of his side projects. But like this would have to be a couple of $1,000 item back in 2001.
Well, remember that Hammond also promised a further $3,000, or no, further, what was it?
Fully fund for 3 years.
He said he'd fund him for 3 more years, and at this point that would have ran out. It's 8 years later.
Yep. And it's the thing, that funding would have run out just before the San Diego incident, so right when they're looking for more funding, all of a sudden there's a T-Rex running down San Diego and people are turning away from paleontology and going, well, what's this real dinosaur? Where'd this come from? And that would have been one of the first nails in the coffin.
Mm-hmm.
But we get a bing noise and prototype complete, and Billy opens the lid and reaches in, pulls out the prototype, and Sire lifts it into the air to show Alan. And he says, I'll give you the resonating chamber of a velociraptor.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of interesting here too. I've done a bit of a zoom in on the side, beside the printer here. I don't know what you'd call them. It's similar in Jurassic Park where Nedry's computer and that was. There was like a stack of external hard drives or something, like a tower. I know there was a this here's got an Apple Macintosh logo on it anyway that you can see if you zoom in. But in the mid 90s, Apple did make a computer tower that was sort of described as the pizza box, where it was flat and you could stack 4 or 5 of them on top of each other to have them all linked. But it didn't quite look like that, and it doesn't quite look like this either. But it seems to be an Apple product of some sort.
Mm.
Whether that tower is part of the computer, or I'm guessing it's part of the computer and not part of the prototyper itself. Because I googled Apple prototyper and I couldn't find anything to say that they even made one. So unless it's a little bit of movie magic as well, we never know.
Well, we also know that I doubt that they did, but we do know that they did supply the computers for the park in the first movie. So Jurassic Park ran on Apple.
Well,
basically.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that and where there might be ties between that and Jurassic Park 3 when we get to the script and novel comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
And we will go straight on that because they're pretty much... Billy just brings it up to his mouth and says, listen to this, and starts blowing through it. And as the minute ends, you can sort of hear the sound, and you can see on Alan's face, sort of remembering what that sound sounded like. But in the script, it continues much the same, but although when we enter the tent, it's described as a dusty old Macintosh computer that's feeding data into the machine, which is the size of a dormitory refrigerator, one of those small refrigerators. I'll post a photo up when the minute goes up, but if you actually look when him and Alan are walking through the camp past the trailers towards that tent, you can see the prototyper working in on a little table, and it's on a table desktop. It's not a big refrigerator-sized piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So whether they were just sort of describing it in the script as what it was without even knowing how big it actually was going to be, because both in the script and the novelisation it's described as being the size of a refrigerator, but it's not here in the film. But it's interesting here where it's described as an old Macintosh computer. In 1997, when Steve Jobs took Apple back over, he sort of brought in that newer sort of bubble design for their Apple computers, and like different colours. Mm-hmm. Gone were the days of just the flat greys and beige coloured brick computers. Mm-hmm. Where this is clearly that, and this is clearly, well, the mid-90s all look the same. So it's quite possible this is the same sort of computer used in 93 in Jurassic Park. We don't quite, where they show the skull on the screen, we don't quite drop down to see the name or the model on the screen, unfortunately, on the side of the monitor. But the Macs didn't change, or the Macintosh computers didn't change a lot in design through the 90s, so when I found out, I've gone, oh, Grant's got an InGen computer, but no, those computers are probably still sitting on Nublar, wrapped in vines and moss. Sort of the monitor design that we do see here in these shots does look a lot like the monitors we see in the Lost World in the communications room and that.
Mm-hmm. I remember those monitors from '97. I'm not sure if they're brand new, but when I went to when I was in kindergarten in '98, I remember that the building had just been built, so essentially everything in there was new. The paint you could still smell. Half the thing even wasn't even finished being built yet. And so there's still like painting stuff. And I remember the computer room, we had had those exact monitors that you described. They were blue in the back or purple or something like that.
Well, yeah, a lot of different. Some were even trendy and they were completely clear, the clear plastic, but they were sort of like a large bubble shape. Purple, blue, orange, a lighter colour blue. Mm-hmm. They really sort of got that extra colour, changed up what a Macintosh computer really looked like. And I'm pretty sure they were all inclusive, like everything was in that monitor, much like your all-in-ones are today. But
yeah, I think they are. I think it was, yeah.
So that sort of raises the question again: if Billy spent a week's worth of their budget on this piece of equipment, you think the old Macintosh computer would be a throw-in to go with the prototyper.
It might have been, you know.
But then the other thing is too, if that's a older Macintosh, I don't know if they'd be able to run a CAD system to be able to support the prototyper either. It'd be like having a Windows 98 computer now trying to plug a 2010 printer into or something. Like, no, it doesn't compute. I don't want to do this anymore.
That's a good point.
But then, too, like as we were saying earlier with the Apple and Jurassic Park, those computers in front of the actors weren't actually doing what they appeared to be doing. That was all a second control room behind a fake wall that was feeding them computers data. So
they also had a lot of that, what we see pre-programmed into them. Like, we know that the recording of when Nedry's talking to the the doc guy he has there. That's just a video that he's playing. The video feed, the timer on the video running at the bottom of the screen.
That's a great one, that one. Yeah, so it's more than possible that it's doing exactly the same thing here. Especially when you don't see the rest of the computer. Billy's not actually interacting with the computer at all. He's just sort of leaning on top of the prototyper, talking about it. There's a cut line too that Alan has when Billy says, "Welcome to the future of paleontology." Grant asks, not if it can't dig, which he sort of wants it to help him dig. Yeah, and it sort of continues to push the Grant hating technology idea, but when he sees Billy pull the prototype out, it's sort of he can't help but be amazed by it and enticed by it. Yeah, in the novel, on novelisation, sort of Alan also asks after the machine dings if it's future paleontology, if it can dig. And when Billy says, "I present to you the resonating chamber of a velociraptor," Grant sort of retorts and goes, "You mean the computer simulated resonating chamber of a velociraptor?" Which was one thing I was going to bring up. Yes, you can sometimes. There's plenty of fossils and skulls out there that have been, like, all the bones being hollowed, or the rocks being hollowed out from inside the skull to sort of show the skull, and obviously the inside gooey bits like the brain, and you'd think the resonating chamber and that would be something long lost in fossilisation. I don't even know in 2001 or 2000 how you'd scan the interior of a skull when it's full of rock or full of fossilised material. One, to sort of get the scans, both internal and external, of the resonating chamber, but of the skull itself. Yes, you could probably scan the interior of the skull